has brought in a large number of very, very important steps like bringing EMBO and many other things. Sir, Professor Alok Dhawan will introduce you, and before that I would like to apprise you of the summer research training program. And we started this about a month and a half before, where we got about 15,000 applications online, when we were expecting only 400 to 500 applications or 400 to 500 people can be supported. But we went ahead and then about more than 14,000 people who have registered, and then we are giving the summer research training at various levels and various labs. And this involves not only online lecture series, a summer research program is initiated, and we have lectures by eminent scientists and lectures in specialized areas, and we have some quiz competition and an essay writing competition and some slogan and then a short note on sustainable developmental goals. And also we have a small essay to invite students that if they are the Prime Minister of the country, what is that they want to do in one page. And these are the competitions that we have, and then there is an enthusiastic participation, and the students are really very much excited to listen to the most eminent people of the country and abroad. Royal Society of Chemistry and DBT India Alliance are also partnering with this, and in addition to the students, about 500 mentors are also participating, not only in CSIR but in the other laboratories. And with these things, we are able to go ahead, and your support also for the summer research training program and drug discovery hackathon is also very successful. And summer research training program also provided a little bit of a platform to conduct the drug discovery hackathon in that area. Thank you very much for all your support and all your directions for us to do something of doing summer research in the time of COVID. And under your leadership, we all will be very happy to go ahead. And one of the very important feature of this particular program is we plan to have about 250 to 300 videos which will explain each and every instrument which are used in physics, chemistry and biology with their principles, and sometimes some experiments are also demonstrated, and these videos are uploaded, and we have a CSIR SRTP channel, and I would like to request you to open 5 of those videos, and we are now in the process of preparing, and with this effort we plan to have about 300 videos by the end of this August, and I request Dr. Swapnali Hazarika to request Professor Vijayraghavan to release the videos. Swapnali.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. On the occasion of CSIR SRTP program, today we want to release 5 videos. So, sir, with due permission from you and on behalf of you, we are clicking the videos here. So, please, sir.
Yes, I can see them. Excellent, and I'm really delighted to release them.
Okay, so
thank you very much, sir. Now I request Professor Alok Dhawan to introduce Professor Vijayraghavan.
Thank you, Shastri, and a very good afternoon to one and all on this live telecast, especially the students who have joined us to celebrate science with none other than the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India, Professor K. Vijayraghavan. He is a very distinguished scientist, of course. He is an FRS, but he has also served as the Secretary of the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India from 2013 to 2018. And earlier to that, he was the Director of the National Center for Biological Sciences in Bengaluru, where he continues to be a distinguished professor. And I echo the sentiment of my friend Shastri that he has a passion for teaching. And I still remember as a secretary of the Department of Biotechnology, who used to take he used to take the weekend off and go back to Bangalore and teach the students. I think it is his quest for knowledge that has driven him to this, and I think we are very fortunate that we are having his lecture today as a lecture of eminence. Professor Raghavan again is a exemplar because he graduated with a BTech degree in chemical engineering and an MTech from IIT Kanpur, and then he completed his doctoral work in molecular biology. So that was a jump from chemical engineering into molecular biology, and then from TIFR, and later on, of course, he did his postdoc at Caltech, and then he came back to NCBS, and he has been honored with the fellow of all the fellowships of the Indian Science Academies. Along with that, he is the fellow of the Royal Society UK, also the US National Academy of Sciences and the Academy of Medical Sciences UK. He also was bestowed with the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award of CSIR and the Infosys Prize 2009. And for his outstanding work, he was also conferred with the Padam Shri in 2013. As a science administrator, and I would say very able science administrator, he has also been spearheading the science, technology and innovation policy of 2020, the Government of India. He has also been instrumental in conceptualizing the National Science Foundation for the country. Not only that, he opened the gateways for the young scientists by forming the Young Investigators Program, which has now been tied up with the European program, and so our young scientists are able to go to Europe through this program as well. And he also made India as a member, associate member of the European Molecular Biology Organization, which is EMBO, which is one of the most prestigious organizations. And I think with people of his caliber and stature at the helm of science and technology in this country, I think India is poised to become one of the topmost leaders in science, and also, as we are now saying, become Atmanirbhar. And as I think Professor Mashelkar mentioned, Atmanirbharta only comes with Atmavishwas, and that comes when you know you have the better understanding of science and technology. So I think with these few words, we have the extreme privilege of listening to Dr. Vijayraghavan today on summer research in the time of COVID-19. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Alok, for that introduction. It's a bit generous, but thank you very much. And thank you, Shastri, for having me here. And I'm delighted to be amongst all of you and all the summer research students. These are, of course, very unusual and difficult times, and poses enormous challenges in the way we do science in general, let alone start a scientific career and by being involved in summer training, which is a very, very exciting experience, which will leave an imprint on your lives, which you'll remember for right through your career. So what does it mean to be a scientist at these times, and particularly to be a young scientist at these times? And this is not easy, yet because it is not easy, it also stimulates us to think of ways of doing science which otherwise we would not normally do, and we would be rather complacent. So we are forced to think of new ways of doing science. Now, I won't use slides and give you a long and boring talk. I'll try to be brief, and then so that there's time for questions. But let us look at the way our future is going in terms of our science right now. And if you look at that future, imagine our lives in 2050. And this is about 30 years from now. And all of you who are in your 20s who have come for your summer program would be at the peak of your scientific or whatever other career you choose. And what sort of world do we see? Now, those who are historians of the future, as I call them, meaning those who work on history and use that to predict the future, they have warned us of the many dark paths which lie ahead. And they say that we, our initial target on life on this earth as humans was to barely survive. And we were then victims of the dice which nature threw, and sometimes we lucked out and sometimes we didn't. But what has happened over this period of lucking out and getting into trouble, that we have actually, loaded the dice in what we think is our favor. And with some luck and some ingenuity, we have also explored nature's engineering. And the result of that, through science and technology, the mysteries of Prithvi, Jal, Vayu, Akash, and Agni, the earth, oceans, air, the skies, and energy, are seemingly ours and only ours to understand. But in trying to understand, we've also become nature's engineers, and now we are stewards of this planet. We are faced with the challenge of sustainable development for all while we conserve our biodiversity, the environment, and dealing with climate change. So, in this landscape, a new kind of technology has also emerged, and that is the technology which harnesses data and uses data to convert it into decision making and power. So not only do we have a situation where we have changed the planet and have to deal with the many challenges of climate change, environmental breakdown, and so on and so forth, we also are dealing with future technologies which will affect us. And in that situation, what does a country like India do with its very large young population? Do we just stay back and be told that here are the new technologies, see how you can use them? If not, how do we actually get into a strong leadership position? And that is something which, if you think now as summer trainees and go ahead, then you can do wonderful things. So the point is that life on Earth started several billion years ago, and understanding that has come from many, many studies over tens of thousands of years. Humans have always been, in every culture, curious about the origin of life and how different forms of life have evolved. But we know from the theory of evolution laid down by Darwin and by Alfred Russel Wallace, how life very likely originated from one common early ancestor. We don't know how that happened, but let us take as a first approximation something which is a common ancestor, which then evolved into a unicellular organism. Now, over time, over tens of thousands of years, millions of years, hundreds of millions of years, different forms of life have evolved from this early stage. And they're all connected to each other because of this common ancestor by a shared chemistry. And that shared chemistry is connected by the thread of DNA. So, in other words, as trainees, if you understand anything, any life on Earth, you are understanding every other form of life on Earth because of this connection. And it's not just biology I'm talking about. By understanding how life evolved in the context of the oceans, the land, weather, climate, and what humans have done, we do other wonderful things. So, for example, humans have evolved the ability to oppose thumb and forefinger and make tools and grasp tools. We've evolved the ability to speak, to think in abstractions, and all of that means that we have moved away from evolution by natural selection to cultural evolution, where cultures dominate the future of the earth. Now, in this context of evolution, we're living in another time when there is something which is called a spillover, which has taken place at huge levels. And this spillover means that other animals living in proximity to us, and they harbor many viruses, bacteria, other kinds of pathogens, which may or may not cause damage to them. Sometimes through this amazing ability of evolution to shuffle all cards and allow low probability events to happen as long as there's sufficient time. There is spillover of pathogens from other animals to humans. This spillover usually results in nothing much happening. The person who's affected is affected, but sometimes the spillover allows transmission from human to human, and then there is an escalation which we're seeing right now. And this is something which we've understood a lot through our understanding of nature and science and technology. So in these kinds of contexts, evolution, what we've done to the earth, and what's happening now, how will 2050 look like when you will be young, 50 years old? Will we have damaged the world so inexorably that we will be finished? Would we have recovered? Would there be quality of life? And so on and so forth. Those are very important questions we'll ask. Now, the Earth, as I said, was born a little over 4.5 billion years ago. The Sun and the solar system a little earlier. And amazingly, life on Earth came about a very short while after the Earth was born. And how life arose on Earth and how we are today are very important questions which people ask. Now, if you look at science and the Earth, actually, in 2050, there are four major areas which we need to worry about today. We as humans worry about ourselves a lot, so humans are one. Second, we have to worry about climate. Third, we have to worry about biodiversity. And fourth, we have to worry about our environment. All of these are linked with each other, and it's not that, by one, we don't have to worry about the other. But if you ask a scientist, this is what they'll say that you need to worry about over the next 30 years. But if you ask, McKinsey or PricewaterhouseCoopers or Ernst & Young, they will give you a very different picture. They will say that there are key messages for the world economy. There are shifts in global economic powers. There are, drivers of global growth. Emerging economies will dominate. What are the policy implications and so on? So they'll take a very economy-centered viewpoint where, in my view, the nuances of what we're doing to the earth are not often critical for them. So that's a very different view they'll take. And given our demography today, which is bottom heavy, like a pyramid, will become like a cylinder in 2050, we have to ask very important questions. Not only will our population demography change in 2050, global temperatures will change dramatically. If you have a world map on which you draw a heat color code, with blue being cool and red being hot and yellow being in between, the world will be all the blue parts would have gone to yellow and the yellow parts would have gone to red. The North Pole would be red. So the global temperatures would shoot up a lot unless we do something. So greenhouse gases, again, unless we do something right now, will go from all the way from something like, 300-ish ppm equivalent of CO2 at 2050. There are very extreme scenarios which predict about 550 or so, and very modest which predict about 450 or so. So we have a lot of work cut out as far as greenhouse gases go. Similarly, with sea level rises, the very extreme predictions suggest that in 2050, sea level rise relative to 2000 in terms of meters, sea levels would have risen by over 1.5 meters at worst, and about close to 0.5 at least. So these will have, again, dramatic consequences all over the world. And biodiversity is another area where forest cover might come down, land use for industry might go up, for pasture might go up, and therefore these are going to have, again, different kinds of problems. Now, typically, historically, there have been many historians of the future who have predicted doom. Malthus predicted that populations have a tendency to grow, and he said this in 1834, that population will grow until poorer people suffer hardship, want, and greater susceptibility to famine and disease. And then there will be catastrophe, people will die, and otherwise there will be greater and greater populations. Paul Ehrlich, who's another philosopher, scientist, talks about the dangers of overpopulation. The Club of Rome talked about the population bomb. The planet, the country panel for climate change talks of global warming, which I mentioned. So all these talk about disastrous future for the planet. Others, such as Hans Rosling, point out how human interventions can have benefits and how population growth is declining and health is improving, wars are decreasing, and so on and so forth. So there are two different kinds of people who predict that things will get better and others who predict that that things will be much more difficult. But that said, the challenges really are enormous. And historically, humans have had a hubris, a self-confidence that they can deal with anything, right? So when the domestication of plants and animals took place, and as population grew, humans needed to have greater agriculture yield, and nitrogen from the soil was running out. They got nitrogen from guano, bird shit, from all over the world and used that in Europe and in America. And when that started running out, they got nitrogen from nitrite mines from China and South America. And when that started running out, chemists invented the Haber-Bosch process to fix nitrogen from the atmosphere and make ammonia. And there's this wonderful book called The Alchemy of Air by Thomas Hager, which you should read, which shows how the Haber-Bosch process transformed agriculture, but also horribly created chemical weapons which were used. So science and engineering, when put to pressure, can deliver in multiple ways. And as citizens, as members of society, which way we use science is very important. And the Haber-Bosch process, for example, resulted, as I said, in making ammonia and then fertilizers. And today, more than half the nitrogen in our body comes from the Haber-Bosch process. Humans also have had enormous impact on the environment. And one example whose impact will be seen for hundreds of millions of years is the atomic bomb explosion at the Trinity site in New Mexico on July 16th, 1945 at 5:29 in the morning. And this is thought by some people to mark the beginning of the Anthropocene, where humans put a lasting impact on the planet. So all this understanding has impacted on the world in enormous ways. Our ability to alter the environment and our understanding of biology is similarly underpinned by the structure of DNA, which was discovered by Watson, Crick, Rosalind Franklin, and Maurice Wilkins, has resulted in us transforming the environment. But one important characteristic of all our technological breakthroughs and its applications since the first industrial revolution to the fourth is us trying to get at low cost the fruits of technology without substantially paying heed to the consequence on future generations. So that's something very important which you should keep in mind. Things are cheap now for two reasons. They're cheap because you've invented technologies which allow frugal products to come to you. But they're also inexpensive because the environmental costs of what we produce today are being met not by us, but by future generations, i.e. you, when you grow up, will have to pay the cost of what we, the grown-ups, are doing today. And this has been the history of humanity. Other societies, other people, the environment, they pay the cost of what we have used to have a higher and better standard of living and a greater cost. So thermodynamically, we have created islands of low entropy by getting energy from outside those islands and sustaining ourselves. So today we have an important challenge. How can we create a planet of low entropy without an energy source which damages the environment and without causing damage to each other, to different countries and so on? So that's an important challenge. And that challenge is a big one, and economists have studied this. There's an economist in Cambridge, Partha Dasgupta, who pointed out that the chainsaw is a great invention. It allowed you to cut trees and use wood for all sorts of purposes, but its ecological costs were enormous. Similarly, deep sea fishing was a great new technology. It allowed high protein food to come to many people's table, but the cost to the oceans were enormous. So we need to balance the value of technology today while we look at how we actually also protect the environment. And that makes things expensive, and that we must start paying now. I'll try to end now by pointing out that I mentioned spillovers as coming from human animal proximity, such as wet markets, forests, cutting forests, and so on and so forth. But that's not necessarily the only route for spillovers and pandemics. Inside our bodies are bacteria and viruses which happily live in a commensal manner without causing any damage. And one animal where such bacteria lived very happily is this Saiga antelope in Kazakhstan. It's a very hardy antelope, but it lives in very difficult conditions, and many animals die upon birth every year. But a few years ago, a very large number of these animals died. And that was investigated, and the reason for that found last year. And it turns out that there's a commensal bacterium, which because of a higher temperature of 1.5 degrees 1 year, that invaded the bloodstream and caused sepsis, and huge numbers of these animals died. So you can get a switch of a pandemic coming from as simple as a commensal bacteria, turning on genes which it otherwise didn't, and becoming an invasive one. So we must, our understanding of the fundamentals of chemistry, biology, human biology, our ecosystem, climate change, needs to be looked at from an integrated manner and not as chemists, physicists, engineers, and so on and so forth. Our learning and our understanding as chemists or physicists are important. One should not be generalists who touch everything but have no depth. But our approach towards using our training should be a collaborative one which solves problems rather than have solutions from our disciplines which are in search of problems alone. So this is the distinction which we must make going ahead. I'd like to then tell you that there are many areas which people are exploring here today all over the country, and please use those opportunities fully. You heard about those. But there are fundamentally things which we need to focus on now, and they are related to climate, environment, biodiversity, health, and energy. Then there are other unknowns which are wonderful to explore, and these are like the deep ocean, the outer space, and the microcosmos around us. These are absolutely, exciting areas to explore. There are other areas which we know very little about. I told you about the origin of life. We know little about the brain. We know in mathematics and in fluid dynamics very little about solutions, for example, for the Navier-Stokes equation. So right from abstract mathematics to fluid dynamics to chemistry, there are extraordinary unknowns to explore. And finally, there are things which we don't know at all, and we don't know what we don't know. And those kinds of things one can understand and explore when they fall upon us only by having an interactive, collegial, friendly environment with each other, so that when a crisis comes about 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, you know who to call, who to discuss with, and what to do. And this foundation of friendship and science will allow India and the world to benefit from your youth and your enthusiasm, connect India to Bharat, and connect and bring into our scientific workforce a very large number of women. That's absolutely needed. Remove glass ceilings for women so that women take on leadership positions. And if you do both, connect India to Bharat and have science available to everyone, and if you have a greater number of women being involved, there are wonderful things to be done. So I'll stop here and I'll be happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. It was an excellent talk. Shastri, how do we go about? I think the students will be.
Hello, thank you very much, sir, for your very, very insightful questions, which you have yourself tried to relate to the human evolution for many, many years. And I request our young colleagues, is it possible for you to take a few questions, sir?
Absolutely,
Yes, sir.
absolutely.
Yes, yes. Sir, we have few questions.
Hello,
Yes, sir, we have few questions.
sir.
Yeah,
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yes, sir. So, sir, first question we have, what can be done to promote research and innovation in our society?
Well, this is a very apt question for today. Yesterday, the new national education policy was unveiled. And I would urge all of you to read that because it's truly a forward-looking document which addresses the importance and not only the importance of education, higher education and research, but fundamentally how to get that done. In that, there is a chapter on the National Research Foundation, which is going to come up soon. Today, what happens is that 90% of our resources go to 10% of our centrally funded institutes and universities. And 90% of our students go to state universities, and where there's not enough research opportunity. So, one big thrust is going to be through the National Research Foundation to take research all the way down to our schools and colleges across the country. So if we do that well and have mentoring programs to stimulate research in those areas, partnerships with more well-endowed research institutes, sharing of intellectual and material resources, I think we can transform our ecosystem and make it much, much more powerful than it is now.
Thank you, sir. So the last question I would like to take is, we are able to overcome many problems, but still with development of technology, the ill effects of the environment can't be denied. Is there any way to combat these threats and make a balance?
Absolutely. And this is the time during this pandemic to set this balance right. Because, the the plate of industry, economy, politics, science, and people have been wound up over the last few hundred years in a certain manner. And that certain manner has resulted in the economic powerhouses and the rich becoming richer in a certain manner. And that certain manner did not pay sufficient attention to environmental and climate damages. Now, because of the pandemic, a lot of that has come unraveled. And when we put it together, we must put it together in a different manner where we pay attention to environment and the climate. Now, we can do that by focusing on sources of energy, having more stress on renewable sources of energy, focusing on reducing the emission of greenhouse gases in terms of the kinds of transport and crops and so on which we use, but very importantly, also focusing on economic opportunities which actually increase the standard of living without causing damage to economy. This has now become much more feasible because of interesting revolutions in economics, in power transmission, power transistors, and so on, which allows you to drive the engines literally through lower voltage and therefore lower amount of power, allowing the tools of technology to reach a much larger set of people with lower environmental impact. So these are extraordinary opportunities.
Thank you very much, sir, for your enlightening and informative talk. Now, I would like to request Dr. Swapnali Hazarika to take the first.
No, Himakshi, before that I have one, sir, I have one question from a participant.
Okay, sir.
Can you take that question? The question
Yes,
is
sir,
due to COVID, there is an opportunity that we can do really good research and excel in it. And also due to this, there are many opportunities that Indian students have to go abroad are now curtailed. So in this situation, how do you expect the Indian science to go in 5 years from now?
So, I think the point is not so much about opportunities to go abroad or to stay here. But I think the situation now has highlighted uh, the requirement to change that asymmetry. Over a very long period of time, the growing economies on the West have had an extraordinary capability in terms of their investment and talent and so on. But they've also been attractive legitimately to people from all over the world to drive those engines. And India's export bill for humans, for example, of talented people, far exceeds our oil import bill. So we are actually paying, for people to go out and serve other economies well. But given our large demography, a large number of young people, that in itself is not right or wrong. It's okay for people to go. But we must enormously increase opportunities here so that Indians are there in the top 100 in every field across the world, both in India and abroad. So strengthening our system is as important, indeed more important, while we increase our quality so that we go with a position of strength and not as people who are trained to serve other larger or bigger economies.
Thank you very much, sir. This is really very important for us to see the long-term perspective, and it is an opportunity for us to take the country forward. And Alok, you have some question?
Asking me?
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful talk that we had by Professor Vijayraghavan. I think I'd just like to, on behalf of the students maybe and on behalf of the mentors, I think this is an excellent opportunity that we are shifting gears from a physical presence to a presence on the digital era and a digital platform where we can interact not only within the country but globally. So how do you see, sir, that this, especially the research that we can do, how we can make research more inclusive? People maybe from the far-flung rural areas can be joined together on these digital platforms. So how do you see India going on that aspect?
No, I think this is a very, very interesting and important point you have raised, Alok. There are two aspects to this. One, our interaction with our best minds all over India should be scaled up using digital platforms now. And this must be done by a combination of training, so the best courses are available to them, so that very rapidly they can be up to speed compared to the best in the world. There are some areas of research, such as in computer science, mathematics, artificial intelligence, which are more quantitatively anchored, where physics, where Indians can very rapidly learn to be compatible to the best with some speed through digital platforms. There are other areas which are more experimental and much more demanding, which combine both ideas as well as experiment. But that will be a bigger haul, but sharing equipment and resources would allow that. If these two are done on scale and we take on big questions to address, then we are in a position where we can take on the world by being a Vishwaguru, where we collaborate nationally and internationally to solve the most biggest and complex problems.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Sir, about this summer research training program, I want to tell you that within 1.5 months, we have 8,40,000 views. And the number of people who have visited and viewed our websites and the videos are more than 400,000, 4 lakhs. And people like you, it started with Shekhar Mande, our Honorable DG, giving the first lecture. And we have DST Secretary, DBT Secretary, MOES Secretary, Chairman Atomic Energy, Dr. Mashelkar, Dr. Brahmachari, and several other people have agreed to give this lecture. And it will be culminated by the final lecture by Dr. Mr. N.R. Narayan Murthy. And we are very happy that so many people are able to take their time and connect to a large number of people. The message, the time that you have taken will be reaching several thousands of people, and these videos are available in our SRTP channel. And I hope that this little exercise that we are doing from CSIR with under the leadership of you and Dr. Shekhar Mande and others will be of great help for our students and scientists working in this field. With this, I request our my colleague, Dr. Swapnali Hazarika, to give the vote of thanks. Swapnali is also a chemical engineer working. Swapnali, you are around?
Yes, sir, I am here.
Yeah, you have to put your video on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So she is also a chemical engineer by training and working in interdisciplinary areas and taking a lead in making the videos. Now over to Swapnali. Thank you very much, sir. On behalf of entire academic community, I thank you very much. Swapnali, now it is.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Honorable Director, CSIR NIST Jorhat, Dr. Z. Narahari Sastry, respected speaker, Professor Vijayraghavan, Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India, Dr. Alok Dhawan, Director CSIR IITR, and all participants. It's my pleasure to have been asked to propose vote of thanks on this occasion. I, on behalf of the Director, CSIR NIST, and all CSIR SRTP team members, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the Honorable Speaker for taking out your valuable time and gracing our program with your exemplary talk on summer research in the time of COVID-19. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for our Director, Dr. Z. Narahari Sastry, for organizing this summer research training program and providing us this excellent platform for being virtually connected and spreading knowledge in this tough time. I also wish to express my gratitude to Dr. Alok Dhawan, Director IITR, and all the SRTP team members for providing their continuous support and working tirelessly towards making this program successful. I also thank all the participants for their active participation in today's session. Thank you everyone for being with today and stay safe. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.